What if I told you the Bible warned us about the trap of modern money over 3,000 years ago? Buy now, pay later, piles of credit card debt, wealth inequality, money printing. The list goes on and on and on. All these things give us the illusion of wealth, looking richer, but working harder and feeling poorer. Can the Bible actually identify this trap? And more importantly, can it show us the way out of this modern day hamster wheel? Specifically, if you don't subscribe to biblical principles and biblical teachings, I want to hear from you with a very specific question at the end. Let's dive into it. So today, I want to go back to the ancient world, around 1000 BC, 3,000 years ago. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open up the Bible. I've been reading this as a instruction manual. I have been, funny enough, more invested and interested in the Old Testament of the Bible than the New Testament of the Bible. In my early Christian days, I spent a lot of time in the New Testament. This is where I personally believe lots of new Christians should spend the majority of their time learning about Jesus, learning about the love of Jesus. But recently, I found an immense joy and interest in the ancient world. And what is more ancient than the Bible? And so today we're going to dive into the book of Ecclesiastes. This is a book written by Solomon. He's kind of asking the hard questions, life's tough questions. It seems like there's this internal debate. It's this introspective look and a look into what we can see. What was the king thinking 3,000 years ago? You know, it's kind of a nice break from the history of the Bible, moving into this really intimate, more like a personal journal to the king. And you can see in this short book kind of the wrestling that his mind is going through. Right off the bat, in the first chapter of this book, chapter 1, verse 12, I, the teacher, Solomon the teacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to examine and explore through wisdom all that is done under heaven. God has given people this miserable task to keep them occupied. You can hear, he seems upset that we can think. He's like, God, why do we have all this free will? Why do we have these brains? I have seen all these things that are done under the sun, and I have found everything to be futile, a pursuit of the wind. This man who has everything, dude's got 700 wives ready to please him. He's got all the money, all the food, all the servants. He's literally ruling a nation. He's like, my brain is futile. The pursuits of my mind are futile. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. He goes on to talk about the emptiness of possessions. This is now chapter 2, verse 6, where he says, I constructed reservoirs for myself from which to irrigate a grove of flourishing trees. I acquired male and female servants and had slaves who were born in my house. I also owned livestock, large herds and flocks, weird flex, but okay, more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. He says this a couple times in the book. He's like, look, I'm the greatest that ever was. Dude's like, I'm the GOAT. I also amassed silver and gold. Finally, something you and I can kind of, contribute or at least share. And the treasure of kings and provinces. I gathered male and female singers for myself and many concubines, the delights of men. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. There it is again. My wisdom also remained with me. All that my eyes desired, I did not deny them. I did not refuse myself any pleasure, for I took pleasure in all my struggles. This was my reward for all my struggles. So here he is setting the stage. He's like, yo, I am the GOAT. I've got everything anyone could ever want. This is here he is in chapter 2. So first one, he's like, and we're not breaking down this chapter by chapter. I'm just kind of like setting the stage for what's going on here. The first chapter, he's like, hey, my brain is weird. I've got all this wisdom, but things still feel futile. And then he's like, and look at everything I have. He's not like, I'm some poor servant. You don't understand. Like, I think life was pretty good for Solomon 3,000 years ago. So how does this apply to today, right? We're talking about right now a king who's got 700 wives and 300 concubines and gold and silver and livestock and servants being born in his house. Not a very relatable dude, to say the least. But in chapter 5, I think it actually does get fairly relatable, something you and I can actually feel and investigate today. So 5 verse 10, he says, the one who loves silver is never satisfied with silver, and whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is futile. Then in verse 12, he says, the sleep of the worker is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich permits him no sleep. These coming again from chapter 5. This part of the book is often titled The Realities of Wealth, which I find a very interesting title to this kind of section. He's talking about all the different kind of what the world tells us we want versus how it makes us feel once we achieve it. Verse 15, he says, as he came from his mother's womb, so he will go again, naked as he came. He will take nothing for his efforts that he can carry in his hands. This too is a sickening tragedy. Exactly as he comes, so he will go. What does one gain who struggles for the wind? Oh man, these poets of the old days just speak so weird. The way that I'm understanding this is he's basically saying, what's the point? Good grief, we're here, we work, we spend time and worry about all these possessions, and then that's it. Doesn't matter. Life ends, and so too does the pursuit of everything. Nothing really matters. But in verse 18, the tone kind of changes. Here is what I have seen to be good. It is appropriate to eat, drink, and experience good in all the labor one does under the sun during the few days of his life God has given him, because that is his reward. Furthermore, everyone to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has allowed him to enjoy them. Take his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is a gift of God, for he does not often consider the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. Joy of his heart, right? Reading between the lines here, he's kind of suggesting, hey, God is giving our heart different joys. And when we pursue those joys for the pursuit of the joy, not for the reward of the joy, just for the joy, when we pursue that joy, we can actually be happy. I love a few verses we read here. He's talking about enjoying fruits of our labor. When he's talking about working hard, playing hard, I love this mindset. I think it's very, very important to reap what we sow. But he kind of talks that the actual accumulation, the actual hoarding of these goods that we're kind of all going after. We want more money, we want more silver, we want more stuff. Talking about different possessions that I think King Solomon's kind of saying, hey, just so you know, once you get it, it's not all that great. God gives a person riches, wealth, and honor so that he lacks nothing of all he desires for himself. But God does not allow him to enjoy them. Instead, a stranger will enjoy them. This is futile and a sickening tragedy. Basically, hey, if you amass all this stuff, God gives you all this stuff, you don't actually get to enjoy it. You're going to die and someone else is going to take it and they're going to enjoy it. The way that I'm reading this, if I'm reading between the lines here, it's like, hey, someone else is going to work for it. Someone else is going to work for their joy. They're not going to have a broken heart. They're not going to have a darkened heart. They're not going to be in the pursuit of stuff just for the pursuit of stuff. They're going to be following their passions. One way that I heard, I love Dave Ramsey talking about this. He talks about his wealth as something that is God's, that he manages. That mindset humbles us. That mindset helps us. It reminds us to go after our passions, understanding that our passions are from God, right? That's what the king is acknowledging here. Our passions are from God. And if our passions bring us earthly goods, earthly riches, then we have to not get too attached, too drawn to these earthly riches. What advantage then does the wise person have over the fool? What advantage is there for the poor person who knows how to conduct himself before others? Better what the eyes see than the wandering desire. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. Yeah, you said it. It's basically poetry in motion here. So we have this king 3,000 years ago who has more wealth probably than you and I, times 100 combined. All the viewers of this video combined, the wealth does not equal the wealth that King Solomon had. He has every earthly pleasure that a man could ever want, and yet unhappy. Don't pay attention to everything people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. I personally love this one. Don't worry about what people think about you. Quit keeping up with the Joneses. If your neighbor gets a Lambo, don't go Lambo shopping. Your neighbor got a new boat, doesn't matter. Keep your eyes on the prize. I think this really shows how bad greed can be for our hearts and for our souls. I think it showcases how difficult it can be. He's warning us here, this king. Look, this guy who has everything has either the self-awareness, the divine intervention, or just the greed feelings to say, hey, just because someone else has something, don't worry about it. If someone else is cursing you, it doesn't matter. If you've got your eyes on the prize, if you are truly following passions that God has put on your heart, it's probably fine. There is an evil I have seen under the sun, an error proceeding from the presence of the ruler. The fool is appointed to great heights, but the rich remain in lowly positions. Yo, stay humble, stack sats, am I right? I have seen slaves on horses, but princes walking on the ground like slaves. I love this. Guys, this is a king. This is someone who's got everything. And once again, telling us, hey guys, look, the secret to life is not the stuff. It's not the status. It's not the robes, not the private jet, right? There are slaves. Now, is he talking about actual slaves? No, I don't think so. I think he's talking about slaves of Satan. I think he's talking about slaves to stuff, slaves to material possessions. There are slaves on the jet. These people do not have happiness. That's what he's warning us here, guys. He's saying, hey, you might see the things that you want, and you might see the people in them that feel, that look happy, but they're not. Chapter 9, verse 7. Go, eat your bread with pleasure. Drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for the Lord has already accepted your works. Enjoy life with the wife you love. Wife, one wife, not wives. Interesting. Whatever your hands find to do, do with all your strength. Because there is no work, planning knowledge, or wisdom in Sheol, that's kind of like the afterlife, where you are going. If you are capable of following the passions God has put on your heart, work hard. And he's kind of saying, you will be rewarded, but don't chase the rewards. Chase the passions. It reminds me, again, Bitcoin memes everywhere in this book, in my opinion. And it's got, it's Morpheus and Neo talking.
What are you trying to tell me? I can sell my Bitcoin for millions one day? No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
I love that quote. Change desires. He's talking here about keeping, once again, our eyes on the prize, about keeping our mindset, our hearts on the straight path, believing our missions, our passions are from God, and actually pursuing them with 110%. In the book, 3,000 years ago, identifying the same problems that we are seeing and experiencing today. Depression, people are upset. I don't think it's a coincidence. Today, you can argue life is easier, right? We've got running water, we've got vehicles, we've got good jobs, the internet, we can communicate with anyone, we can scroll and be entertained, the world is our oyster. However, we all know anxiety, depression, suicide rates, all-time high. We've lost the plot, you guys. We need to turn, we need to take a big shift, look inwards, understand what are our passions? What has God given me as a passion? How can I pursue that to actually fill my cup, to actually fill my heart? When all has been heard, the conclusion of the matter is this: fear God and keep his commands, because this is for all humanity. For God will bring every act to judgment, including every hidden thing, good or evil. Whew! We all do stuff outwardly. We all do stuff inwardly. He's kind of throughout this book been wrestling with his internal passions, with his internal works, with what is the point of his life? Someone who's supposed to be ruling an entire kingdom. What's the point of life? Everything is judged by God. We might as well look to him. It makes sense, right? When you think about it, it makes a pile of sense that we should look to God to understand how to live. We should look to God to understand what to do, where to put our efforts, where to put our passions, where to put our money, our talent, everything. Where do we put our lives? We should look to God. And, he doesn't quite say it here, but I'll go ahead and give you my opinion. When that happens, we actually feel satisfied. If we're on this hamster wheel chasing a bunch of stuff, isn't it easier to just step off, take a breath, look to the divine, and actually understand what you're supposed to be doing? It's like when we turn our face towards God, you can ask him for help. The prayer of change desires is probably the most powerful prayer in existence because it doesn't give or take anything away. It moves your heart. It's asking God, come into my body, come into my soul, change my desires. This is the most powerful prayer, in my opinion, on the planet, the prayer of changed desires. My call to you, please, this week, stop chasing things. Start chasing passion, start chasing purpose, understand why you're here on Earth, and pursue it 110%. And as always, stay sovereign.